All right, we're getting started here. Can everyone on the line hear me all right?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, I gotta turn up my volume. All right. Nice and loud. Got it. Okay. All right. Well, good morning, everyone, and I'm going to call to order the June 22nd meeting of the CEDS bi-monthly committee meeting. And we're going to get started with some introductions here. First off, I'm going to ask if there's any legislative staff in attendance that they please introduce themselves first.
Yeah, hi, I'm Doug Lindu. I work in Senator Peters' office.
Thank you, Doug. Is there anybody else? All right. Well, then we're going to get started with around the room introductions for in-person audience first. So I'll begin with you, Nate.
Sure, Nate, I'm Brown, City Manager, City of County.
Thank you. Connie?
Connie Hagelab, Forsyth Township.
Thank you. Ryan Susi, Senior Planner at QPAD.
Emily Susi, I'm a writing consultant, currently working with QPAD doing communication.
Michael Larson with Michigan Energy Options. Ryan Stern with the Michigan Building Trades.
Doug here again from Senator Peters' office.
Leo Islip with the
Henry, Superior Watershed Partnership.
Thank you. And then we'll move over to our online audience. I see Bill at the top of the list.
Bill DeGroot from Chalk Lake Township.
Thank you. Carl, you're next.
Carl Lindquist, Superior Watershed Partnership.
Thank you. Abby Wallace.
Yeah, hi everybody. Abby Wallace, and I'm with the Michigan Environmental Council. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Abby. I see Christine Worley.
Actually, it's Peter Hood. I'm using my wife's computer, but I'm with Schoolcraft County Planning Commission.
I appreciate it, Peter. Thank you. Julie. Carla.
Good morning, everyone. As you mentioned, I'm Julie Carla. I am with the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Glad to have you, Julie. Thank you. Alexander. I think it's Alex. Alex Kofsky, maybe? Maybe not. I'm going to move on to Amy Berglund.
Good morning, everyone. Amy Berglund, Director of Business Initiatives with Invest UP. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you, Amy. Holly Peoples.
Good morning. It's Holly Peoples from UP Michigan Works.
Thank you. And Jamie Van Buren.
Hello, Jamie Van Buren with Invest UP.
Thank you. Jordan.
Jordan Stankina, City Manager for the City of Iron Mountain.
Appreciate it, Jordan. Kathy.
Yeah, this is Kathy Reynolds, Greater Munising Bay Partnership, Alfred County Chamber, and the Munising Downtown Development.
Thanks, Kathy. Matt McCauley.
Matt McCauley, Senior Vice President at the Michigan Economic Development Corporation.
Thank you very much for joining us, Matt.
Good to be here.
Michelle LaJoy.
Good morning, Michelle LaJoy, Executive Director for the Elder Marquette Community Action Agency.
Thank you. Ryan Carrig.
Ryan Carrig with QPAD.
Thank you very much. And last but certainly not least, Mr. Lee Shuri.
Hey, Ryan, Lee Shuri here, U.S. Department of Commerce, Economic Development Representative for the state of Michigan. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Lee, and glad to have you all here. I appreciate you tuning into the CEDS meeting, and our first item of business here is going to be a presentation from Michael Larson and Abby Wallace from the Michael's with the Michigan Energy Options nonprofit, and Abby Wallace is with Michigan Economic. Oh, I'm drawing a blank.
Environmental Council.
Sorry about that. Yes,
No
thank
worries.
you. Oh, my screen's not flipping. Okay, here we go. So within our CEDS, we have this goal for pursuing opportunities to improve affordability and reliability of the UP's energy supply. I think we can, as we're updating our CEDS this year, take another look at this and try to make some of our goals, our goal and our objectives a little bit more sophisticated here. Thinking about drawing on these recommendations that came out of the UP Energy Task Force, that's exactly what the mission is of this group that's forming here. So I'll let Michael get into the specifics of that. So I'll pass it on to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. As you may know me, I know a number of you here. We've worked together on a variety of projects. My name is Michael Larson. I'm with Michigan Energy Options. Michigan Energy Options is a clean energy nonprofit. It's been around since 1978, operating out of East Lansing, but we've been in Marquette since 2005. And I coincidentally I'm also on the City Commission of for the City of Marquette, and I've served on the Planning Commission there for nearly 6 years, prior to being appointed to the commission in January. So I've got some experience kind of within local government, and really have an interest in the intersection of how energy and local units of government come together and can help move the needle forward to a cleaner energy future. In addition to that, I did serve on the UP Energy Task Force, as did a number of the organizations that are here today. Did as well, and helped shape a number of these recommendations that were put forth to the governor's office in order to come up with some method and paths forward that we saw for the UP to engage differently with our utilities and also with our state government. So I just want to turn it over to Abby here really quickly. Abby, she and her group came to us, and I really have helped the momentum, moving forward with the thought of kind of bringing together, a number of groups to kind of think about this problem and how we can reach back to the state of Michigan to encourage action on some of these items.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Michael. I'll just give a quick introduction of myself and my group. So like I said, my name is Abby Wallace, and I am an engagement coordinator for the Michigan Environmental Council, which is an environmental advocacy nonprofit, also based out of Lansing. We've got around 90 member groups across the state that work on pretty much every environmental issue that you could think of. And my background is prior to being in this role and to living up here in the UP, I lived and worked for around 2 years in Lansing, mainly doing advocacy and lobbying around clean energy and climate legislation in the Michigan, or on the Michigan state level. So that's my background. And then Michael, I'm not sure how much you want me to go into like the background and details of how we came to this point of forming this coalition, if you want me to do that now, or if you want to go into.
I think right now would be fine to do that. And then after that, we will kind of very quick overview of what some of those goals, what some of the recommendations were, and the ones that we would consider picking out as applicable to a wider group of folks.
Okay, perfect. Cool. Well, then I'll just start off with a little bit of high level background on how we got to this point of actually deciding to pull together a formal coalition. Once I moved up to Marquette, I ended up getting connected with a guy named Jim Lively, who previously worked for the Groundwork Center in the Northern Lower, and he was pretty crucial in helping to organize the UP Clean Energy Conference back in 2021 that came on the tail of the release of the UP Energy Task Force recommendations. And Jim has since retired, but really wanted to pass on relationships that he built during the time that he was working up here to me. And so we got to talking and we realized that since 2021, there had really been no further action by the state to implement any of these recommendations that had come out. We both thought that was pretty egregious. And so at the beginning of the year, Jim and I started to meet with as many UP stakeholders as we possibly could, including really trying to target all those task force members that had spent their time putting together these recommendations. And we really just wanted to try and A, introduce me, but B, gauge everybody's interest in seeing if there was an appetite to call upon the state to refocus on implementing these recommendations. And we were pleasantly surprised to find out that the interest definitely was there for folks, including task force members like Michael, which is how he and I got connected. So the group of us decided that we were going to embark upon this big task of pulling together a formal coalition. And our overarching goal for this whole effort is just to create a space for a diverse group of UP stakeholders to strategize and plan how best to advocate for implementation of recommendations that came out of the task force. And then should the state heed our call to re-engage on this work, we're hoping that this group will sort of be a launching point for spreading information about different meetings that may be happening put on by the state, and ensuring that UP voices are sort of at the forefront of those discussions and getting the most bang for their buck per se. So far we've engaged with folks from regional planning agencies like QPAD, major universities, major four-year universities, I should say, labor unions, local govs, community orgs, tribes. But I really would just want to stress that we're very, very much at the beginning stages of organizing this. So if you are hearing us talk about this and this is piquing your interest, we're more than happy to plug you into any and all work that we're doing. Ryan has been engaged with this work, so he can also be a good resource for you to get connected to this type of stuff. And then I just also wanted to say that we're really excited that you guys invited us to come talk about this stuff today, and we're also more than happy to help think through any type of, like you said at the top of this, potential clean energy strategies or projects that maybe could be included in this next iteration of this CEDS plan, be those in line with the UP Energy Task Force recommendations or other clean energy things that are just popping out to you. So thanks so much, and I will shoot this back over to Michael.
Thanks, Abby. MEC is really taking the lead on helping kind of getting this kind of moving forward and kind of thinking how we can, kind of speak together to re-engage with the state of Michigan. And so they've taken the initiative to reach out to all the task force members, on a number of occasions, and try to have these conversations to see what the appetite is here at the UP for going through that. So just really briefly, I think it just would help to just talk about a few of the recommendations that the task force made back to the governor's office, that were accepted. And again, these are just recommendations. So the task force came together looking at a two-pronged approach. The first approach that they were looking at was propane supply in the UP, and then the second piece that they looked at was energy reliability and energy needs that were going to be across the UP. So we are really focusing on number 2 here, that is taking a look at those 16 recommendations that came out of that year, that multi-year project with a variety of stakeholders from across the UP. So a number of all these recommendations that were made end up going with a kind of an action item, to a department, and then kind of have an affected organization that's associated with or an affected group of people. And so the recommendations, range from very specifically investor-owned utilities 2 municipal utilities, electric cooperatives, and then some regional planning and community, organizations as well that we're trying to kind of target. So just very briefly, recommendation 1 is taking a look at, trying how do we engage electric utilities, across the region. Number 2 is trying to develop, integrated energy distribution plans for investor-owned utilities. Reviewing of EWR programs. EWR is energy waste reduction. You may be familiar with these programs as rebate programs, through your electric utility. A number of utilities are, continue to provide those, to this day, even though the law has sunsetted. Folks like Nagani still offers, rebate programs associated with updating energy efficiency or installing clean energy on facilities. Taking a look at, opportunities for grants and other resources, trying to work with regional planning organizations to provide grant funding, technical assistance to support planning, zoning, and streamline renewable development. Working to build a worry-free electric vehicle travel across the UP. Number 11, taking a look at determining what the potential is for electric heating across the UP. That's primarily based on, there's been this large push for heat pumps in the UP, or cold weather heat pumps, to transition from propane or natural gas onto, an electricity, all electric homes and heating systems for the UP. But there's still a need to kind of have an understanding of these. There's a lot of education that needs to happen, for residents, to kind of accept them and kind of move forward. There's been some great progress. UPCO's have been doing some great things over in Ontonagon. They electrified a retirement village, I believe it was, in partnership with Mitsubishi, when all the heat pumps from electric resistance heating, and have had great success, saving, that housing commission over there $90,000 a year. So there's some great strides to be made there. And then, looking to expand resources, that are available to support, energy development and clean energy across the UP, which kind of goes along with some of your goals here, with some of your objectives, that you may have. And then kind of finally rounding out, there is some, the commission also recommended, taking a look at brownfields, what is the availability for tracts of land that may have value as hosts for clean energy sites, rather than greenfields. So thinking about brownfields first, prior to moving into like greenfields or agricultural land. Taking a look at that, and getting into even how broadband needs to be adopted, throughout the UP with smart metering, so we can have better communication with our homes, Internet of Things, potential for demand response programs, and then finally, working with the trades and how can we build a clean energy workforce, in the UP, or what are the needs for, training, in the UP. So it really runs a wide gamut, and I know I've kind of thrown out a lot of ideas very rapidly. But again, this coalition, or this idea of a coalition, is just starting to form, and we want to be able to kind of come together and think about which of these items of these 16, makes sense, as a group, to actually re-engage with the state of Michigan. So right now, it's a report. It's sitting there as recommendations. No further action has really been taken, at least to our knowledge, on these recommendations. So are we able to, as a group, like QPAD, WIPWTR, with EUP folks, other organizations, universities, local units of government, able to sign on and say, hey, you recommended number 4 is that, you're going to help, define opportunities and provide grant funding. We recommended, that you work with our regional planning organizations to provide technical assistance, support planning and zoning, in these communities. Is this something that the state of Michigan, that the Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy is willing to act on? And I think the only way we're going to get to that is if we speak together, as one voice. I don't think it doesn't make sense, to come from, Michigan Energy Options. It doesn't make sense to come from MEC, but it does make sense to come from groups like this, from groups like QPAD, from local units of government, folks that know what their community is looking for and how you can kind of put some of that planning into action. So that's really what we're thinking of, and we're just getting started. How are we going to move forward? I think, with MEC, with MEO, with a number of other organizations that we've worked with. I know we've worked with Superior Watershed. That we can help put some of this information together and kind of provide it back to probably Ryan, kind of with this group to help distribute some information and say, hey, this is what we're thinking. Is this something that you're willing to take on, something your organization believes in and is kind of willing to put a name on paper at some point in time in some capacity when we reach back out to Eagle or the governor's the administration or otherwise. So I think that's basically what we are trying to do as far as that goes. Abby, did I kind of miss anything?
No, I think that was great. Yeah.
And I'll just say one more thing, prior to kind of turning back over, and I know I'm a little bit ahead of schedule here, Ryan. But there's a number of things that are coming forth that are tied to what you're looking at here. So we have the Inflation Reduction Act that a lot of folks are familiar with. There are dollars and tax credits that are going to be available for upgrading homes and businesses and otherwise in the near future. So right now, available today, you've got a variety of tax credits for rooftop solar, battery storage, and then we also have for your residents, for your communities, there's going to be a pot of money that actually has rebatable dollars for the installation of things like heat pumps, heat pump water heaters, electric panel upgrades, electric wiring, upgrading your stove from gas to an induction stove, and then even weatherization, that might be out there. But the thing is that there's some potentially serious dollars that are going to be available to residents. Now, there are some caveats. 80% of area median income, you would be eligible for example, for a heat pump, a air source heat pump is up to $8,000 in rebatable dollars. So that's a significant amount that could go back to some of those folks who meet that 80% of area median income. And then it tapers up from there. So even if you're above that, you may be eligible for up to 50%, of those dollars. But $8,000 for heat pump, air sources for space heating, heat pump water heater, potentially up to $1,700. Electric panel upgrades up to $4,000. Electric wiring, $2,500. Induction stove, $840. Weatherization projects, $1,600. Now, the state of Michigan still needs to apply and determine these dollars that they're going to put forth and what is the method for actually rebating them. The IRA in the act says these are the ceilings for what rebates could be offered. And now the state of Michigan could change that up to try to hit more people, but we still don't have the final version of that. So it's TBD. It's going to be adopted sometime here in late 2023, or at least that is what we're hearing, and we'll see where that goes. But other than that, like I said, there's a variety of tax credits, 30% of, total cost for rooftop solar, heat pumps and others, have like a $2,000 tax credit that's associated with them as well. So I think just having some knowledge that these items are out there are helpful when we're thinking about, our communities, when we're thinking about energy waste reduction programs or energy optimization programs that our utilities might have. I know that's something that, we're thinking of when we are working with WPPI. Michigan Energy Options also happens to work with WPPI, with City of Negaunee and Crystal Falls, and Norway, Landsberga, on helping to help manage some of their energy rebate programs. So when we're thinking of these as a community, how do you leverage the dollars that are coming from the federal government on a variety of fronts? And interlace those with kind of recommendations kind of going forward with economic development and with petitioning, your government, your state, kind of as a group to take action on the recommendations that they have accepted, from this program. So I know I did a lot of talking. Happy to answer some questions if you have any. And yeah, Brian.
Yeah, thank you very much, Michael and Abby. This is a really great overview of it. Yes, Nate?
You mentioned the state had applied for funding for these funds. Can you talk about where they're at in that process?
That I do not know where they're at exactly in that process. Essentially the only thing that I know is that they're supposed to do, they're going to be developing what's going to be happening here late 2023. That's all I unfortunately know. So I'm not involved with that process. I'm just know that it's happening, and that's going to be the situation for all the states. So each state has their designated pot of money that they've been given out of this IRA, this Inflation Reduction Act, and how they implement it is a little bit of a black box to me right now. But I will certainly keep Ryan informed, and hopefully the group as when that becomes available. Like I said, the rebatable dollars are they've got ceilings, but all the tax credits are currently there, and they can't be stacked to my knowledge.
So I hear you say you're not sure how they're rolling it out. Yep. I get it. I'm not trying to challenge that, but are you in the know of before it rolls out, or are you just gonna find out as it rolls out, or do we have any way to influence how it rolls out?
No, that's another question that I don't have a great answer to. I think it could be very possible that Ryan finds out the same time I find out, through channels through government channels where they when they announce it and so on. But this is certainly something that a lot of folks are keeping their keeping a finger on the pulse of, especially when it can be combined with a variety of utility programs and income qualified programs and so on. So unfortunately, I don't have that answer.
Yeah, well, I guess the reason I have experience with stuff in the better programs either work through a utility company or through a, I don't know, I'll call it an energy company, but not necessarily the word energy is right, but an energy efficiency company, companies that are, their job is to go out and help do the vacuum seal on the door and do the blower test to figure out what your savings would be. And then those companies actually process all the paperwork. So they find you the contractor, or they are the contractor to implement it. And then they basically reduce the homeowner's bill by the amount of savings and then process all the paperwork. Because otherwise it becomes the red tape nightmare that nobody ever wants to do, or I don't have the money up front to do it, right? So the better state programs are those that offer like a 0% financing program that helps those folks that don't have any money. They collect the rebates because somebody else does the paperwork for them, and they get a 0% financing for some number of years.
Yep.
Then the program becomes effective and you see the real change in the community. But if you went to my town right now and said, here, apply for these energy credits, and all of them are gonna, well, most of them are gonna score high enough to rate based on the income levels, but none of them are gonna have the money behind it to be able to afford it. So no program's actually gonna execute.
Yeah, no, I think you're fully right there. It has to be executed correctly, and whether or not they choose a provider that is rebatable through to the contractor that actually performs the work, or whether it is a loan, kind of a loan project, where it's upfront working with something like Michigan Saves, which provides financing for projects of these types. I don't know what those rules are, but I think you're certainly spot on with it, because you're like, hey, 80% of the AMI, but first you need to pay that $12,000 bill, before you get your $8,000, $2,000 credit, and so on. So putting that up front capital can certainly be an issue. Energy burden, is a real thing. Certainly, Superior Watershed knows all about energy burden of our communities up here, and folks that need help paying their bills certainly are going to have an issue with paying for some of these, upgrades at that time. So I don't know how it's going to work, but I know groups like mine and, MEC and others, will certainly make these known, especially because there are income limits that are associated with this act.
I guess I know I'm just asking the wrong question of the wrong people. I apologize for that up front, but just sparking conversation and dialogue maybe is there's also housing money coming out at the same time, right? And so what drives me most crazy every night, I don't lose sleep over it, but I damn near come close, is that there's this stovepipe of housing money for fixing your roof or fixing your siding, fixing, windows, but it's not paired with this other energy efficiency program. And so, hey, we're going to do this energy thing great on the inside. We're going to do this energy thing great on the outside, and they're not even paired together, and we know how we're rolling it out. But just apply for it. You might get some great opportunity at money. Yeah. I mean, that's just
it can certainly
insane.
Be very siloed. It can be very siloed, and trying to braid those financing structures and funding together is a daunting process. Especially you have to say you've got some of the housing money, but that's only done through your local community action. But then you also have some of these dollars. Can community action take advantage? Can they pay for it? Can they be reimbursed, for some of those, so their dollars will go further? Those are the right questions to be asking. Whether I'm the right person to be asking them to or not, kind of remains to be seen. But we are on the same page, and we are certainly trying to figure out how do you braid all those together. And then with utilities, you've got that low income, you've got some of this, you've got rebates coming from utilities or from certain utilities anyway. You have, I know UPCO and Ishpeming certainly has a rebate program, as well. Marquette does not currently have a rebate program that exists. But yeah, braiding the funding is certainly an issue, there. But as far as when this comes into being, I think that's a state process. I don't know if Senator Peters' office, has anything to say about the IRA Act and how it's kind of the benefits to our local communities here as well. But I mean, of course, that's another resource. Of course, the community planners, and I know city management. You do have regular contact with our state reps, as well as folks within the administration. So I think all of those things are worth bringing up as you have those conversations, saying, hey, when it's coming, how can we best get this out? How are you going to braid it together so it can be affordable and to those individuals who most need it?
Yeah, and so I love the term braiding it together. Thank you. I think that on that regional concept should be part of our concept as when we go forward and talk about how we want to do things as a regional approach and how we all collectively do things. It should be about braiding programs together as like the first construct. Is like, what do we see as, like Nate and I have similar but sometimes different, just on the energy example, right? But our needs are essentially the same. The impacts to the customers are essentially the same. And I just know that these folks aren't getting information, and they're not getting it in a way that they can digest it and decide to apply for money, and there's just no real advocacy going on. Mm-hmm. So I think if we want to do anything with energy as a regional construct, we should be first and foremost braiding programs together in a digestible format. Yep. That our customers can go and say, hey, who do I see? Well, you're going to go to this person, and here's all the answers. Here's the simple 1 or 2 page pamphlet that brings it all together. But it's just so stovepiped that I think we need to regionally at least focus on some of that braiding piece, because we will be wildly successful in making those significant impacts on the local homeowners level first. I mean, that's where people are going to feel it and experience it and love us or hate us, is whether or not we're sharing this information and making it real to them. Yep. They won't care that we put in a solar field and start saving some energy because it's not going directly to them. But they will if you get in their house and start putting new windows and insulation and energy efficient things that impacts their daily budget by reducing their output for energy.
Yep.
And so that's got to be one of those constructs that if we move in some sort of regional capacity, as maybe there's this regional, I don't know, total energy, and then there's the regional focused energy kind of options. But we gotta bring the idea of braiding stuff together, because it's just, I can't even keep up with it, and all I do is watch for this crap.
Yep. No, I fully understand that, and in addition to that, there needs to be robust education about what some of these electrification measures are. When you're talking about electrification of homes, moving to what is a heat pump, what is a heat pump water heater, why does that matter to me? How does that work? Why do they cost more than they do? What are my long-term savings going to be if I swap from natural gas to electric? Those are things that people are going to be grappling with and trying to understand. So, in addition to kind of bringing those resources together, braiding funding is one thing, but then also kind of that robust education, moving forward is going to be a very important piece to get right, especially if these are going to be a success. And I think a lot of folks within our community have a lot of experience with outreach and kind of moving forward. Again, I know we've got Superior Watershed, but then we also have Emily's group that she chairs here, as well with the Climate Adaptation Task Force. Lots of ways to get information out, about this, and then of course, our community leaders, such as yourself and Nate, as well. But it's going to take effort, overall. But it all comes down to planning. If you having a plan and a kind of a way to move forward on it. I know some things you need to act very quickly on with funding and whatnot, but I think how it relates to CEDS is kind of helping to get some of that alignment in order. And it may take a while if you're kind of trying to look at, those very larger picture items about, grid reliability and otherwise. But I think by getting them into planning, at our local levels, whether that's at individual cities, counties, or groups like this that have shared values, I think that gives us more power when we are petitioning or approaching the administration to say, hey, we've got a diverse set of stakeholders, Ishmael, Nagani, Crystal Falls, Houghton, wherever it might be, say, hey, we value what the task force had to say, and we think we need more planning. We think we need more funding. And part of it comes down to funding. I think that's part of what you're going to be asking. These things don't happen by themselves. They need to have some funding behind them. For Ryan to convene. It's great that everybody kind of pulls their time together here. As part of our daily jobs. But if it became more intense, you'd be like, hey, I'm spending too many hours here. How do we move forward? So it's kind of thinking along those lines. Where Ryan can actually put staff, QPAD can put staff towards. That's what I think we can speak towards. And by choosing 2, 3, 4 of those recommendations out of the task force to kind of move forward. In addition to saying, hey, we want to braid that in with current funding that's coming forward in 2023. So yeah, I agree. Lots of silos, going on, and how do we get past that is certainly a challenge.
Thank you. Does anybody on the phone have any questions for Abby or Michael?
This is Peter Hood. I have 2 quick questions. First of all, you indicated that a lot of the energy efficiency savings or that they were going to be geared towards residences. Do you think that's the limit of it? Or do you think there would be opportunities for instance, nonprofits to also get in on the improvements of their energy efficiency of their heating systems?
That's a good question. Unfortunately, I think, I've been very kind of focused on just kind of what's moving forward on, the residential side of things. I know there are potentially some grant dollars, out there on the federal level for nonprofits that are currently happening right now. All of a sudden, I can't think of the name of the program.
I do have a slide on it in my presentation later on. So
but it's open, like I think it's like Renew America's Nonprofits or something along those lines. But there is some programming out there right now that is focusing on nonprofit building infrastructure that can be applied for. So I think it's currently open, right now. Whether or not the IRA specifically allows for businesses or nonprofits, with some of those pieces, I think this is largely residentially based from there, but I would take a look at Ryan's slide coming up.
Great, I look forward to that. My second question, and I know you're looking more at energy efficiency and renewable energy sources, but do you have anything that you could send regarding opinion or consideration of the cryptocurrency data mining issue, since they're such intense users of electricity?
I don't have anything. I don't have anything, immediately to send, around. I know that it's certainly an issue, depending on who. I don't know of any, as far as the UP. I don't know if there's any commercial crypto mining operations that are happening. However, it certainly is an energy sink, that should be considered as you're looking at needs in the community.
There's at least two that I'm aware of, and one's in Schoolcraft County. And just so people know, one of these cryptocurrency operations, which is about a 50 by 50 foot building that's basically just a giant computer, uses about 9 megawatts of power, which is as much as the entire rest of our county. So,
yeah, that's pretty incredible. As far as that goes. So depending on who the utility is, having such a large power draw, they may be eligible for efficiency upgrades or otherwise, where there's rebates that are associated with that. However, robust energy planning, with the local utility would be an important thing to go forward with.
Yeah, and I just wanted to know if you had anything. Thank you. That answers my question.
Yep.
All right, are there any other questions?
I didn't necessarily have a question, Ryan. I just wanted to build on what Craig was saying. I think getting information directly to residents is super important, and there already are a lot of valuable methods of doing that. So the SWP's Michigan Energy Assistance Program, we already go into households throughout the UP, not just in the central region. So we'd be happy to share any rebate information directly to residents. So as the task force is coming up with more information, one-pagers.
Great, thanks for that. One final thing, and I know Ryan, maybe he can send it around. So there is a calculator out there for that kind of exists on a national level. It's Rewiring America, has a IRA calculator. Essentially within that, you can put your household income, number of people in your household, and it'll spell out essentially where you fall. Are you on the tax credit only? Are you up to 50% of rebates, and so on and so forth. So you put in your county, your zip code, number of people in your household, and the household income. It'll kind of give you a rough idea on what you are eligible for, within the IRA guidelines.
Thanks. I'll make sure that gets out to the group. Well, if there are no other questions, I kind of have a couple of questions that I want to put out to the group for discussion here. And so I want to talk about identifying capacity challenges. So there's a lot of opportunities here. Are we going to actually be able to seize on those? I know, a lot of the challenges with the Inflation Reduction Act and the IIJA has been that our communities simply don't have enough capacity to be able to, there's so many opportunities out there. How do you focus on any of these one things? And so just by kind of putting it out to the group, I know we have Superior Watershed Partnership, who is frequently part of that capacity building, but just wondering, communities, how are you seeing this, and what additional help do we need?
So I'll chime in. Yeah, capacity sucks. I mean, it's really bad, and the additional challenge comes with the restriction of the money. Sometimes they're saying you have 1 year to complete the project from the time you get awarded. So you build an application that may be higher than somebody else in scoring and gets you the funding, and then you can't find anybody and you can't execute in time, and then you lose it. So then you look like a community that can't execute programs. And so not being able to execute programs when you receive them is worse than not even applying. So that is a driver for a lot of the decisions as to whether or not we apply for something or not. Do I have that capacity? Because I'd rather not apply and look like I just missed a window than to apply and find out I can't execute, because then I lose points the next time, and because I'm not able to, well, we tried giving it this small community, but they just can't do it. It just doesn't work. And so then it's worse, right? So we have to be picky and choosy, and that capacity is really driving some of those decisions these days. I'm working on a $16 million project right now with Eagle, and the contractors are begging for additional time to get their bid proposals done because the window is so short. And we were authorized by the state to give an additional 3 days when they're asking for 2 months. And so we may not get any bids on a $16 million project. And then the question was, well, what if we don't get any bids? Well, you could try to put it back in another bid cycle, but then you're up against that window. And if you don't get bids in that, you lose $16 million because you fall out of the funding year and the money is not available to you, and you just failed to execute $16 million of critical infrastructure improvements in your community. So timelines matter along with that capacity. So it is a real scary nightmare, and the train is well out of the station, and I'm staring at a light that's about 15 feet in front of me about to smack me in the head. And it's just awful. And we're begging for timeline shifts from the state. Can we please do this special council meeting in another week? Because I just did a special council meeting last week. I don't want to have a meeting every night with my council members to get the next resolution done for the next hit point that you just said you have to do. And yeah, and again, it's taken me a year to get this money programmed. So I got authorized in November of 23. My money doesn't get processed until August, end of August, so call it September of 23, to be able to possibly put it on bid street for fall of 23 to execute in 24. So I got notified in November of 22, and I can't even start anything until the spring of 24. And oh yeah, by the way, you got this timeline to execute it by. If it's not done, you lose money. So it's awful, and we got to figure out something. But I don't know what you figure out, because when your project scope dictates a lot of stuff, there's only so many contractors that can even take on a $8 or $16 million bid in a community either. And when you get into these small projects and you start talking at the smaller scale, my brother works in masonry, and he's booked 2 years out and he's not taking another call. Hey, can you help me with a project at my house? Nope, I'm busy, got no time. So like, there's just, nobody's taking any new business, and there's no pipeline to build new businesses. Like, even if you said I could do it. So I think we got help over there maybe.
Yeah, I just want to, echo that same thing, contractors and timelines. So Marquette County runs an emergency repair program, so it's named. These people have an emergency. Like, their roof is leaking, their furnace goes out. The state timeline for funding ends June 30th, and then in theory would start July 1. But you have to go through a process, then access those funds. That's right in the middle of our construction season. How do we, wrap up a project and then wait and then start again in theory in July? It's very frustrating.
And then building off that too, again, it sounds like it's not necessarily so much the capacity of local UP capacity town type thing. It's more on a state and on a federal level, those restrictions of those larger agencies not understanding what our
like, even building in flexibility within the program. Like, I've pushed for our annual, you know, funding that comes in. So our program, it's a revolving loan fund basically. So whatever money comes in the previous year, we can use in the next year. But then we can't carry that money over that came in until next July. So right now I have to return money because the project fell through that I had put all the legwork in to get completed, but then the quote changed just this past month. So now I can't fit in a new project for the next 5 days. So then I have to return money back. They won't just let me carry it over.
And another thing to know that too, you know, when they're writing these things and they come out of Lansing, our construction season is a lot smaller than it is coming from the lower peninsula. Our construction season is 6 months compared to a 10 or 11 month season, both for a short period of time.
What, you weren't out on May 1st working in 32-inch snowstorm? I can't believe that.
Exactly, because they don't weigh in when they're giving you a year window to get something done.
All right, anybody on the phone have any comments?
So this is Jennifer Figler from Representative Jen Hill's office, and I just wanted to check in. Was it Craig and Ann who were talking about projects that are currently out? Craig, was it the $16 million grant project? And Ann, was it yours, the revolving fund? I just wanted to.
So Craig, yes, and
Emily with Marquette County.
Hey, Emily. So do you both have my contact information? I'd love to get some more information and get that over to the representative and see what kinds of support we can offer for those two pending matters. Do you both have so we can chat after this call maybe?
yeah, I'm sure if I don't have it readily available, Ryan's got it right in front of him.
I'm gonna pop it into the chat. And that way, everybody who's on the call right now has it. And I welcome everybody to go ahead and save that. That's my personal cell phone. And you can call night, weekend, any real time. I'm right here with you in the UP. I'm just over in Gwynn.
Really appreciate that, Jennifer.
Jen, are you planning on attending the CADIS meeting this afternoon?
I am.
Okay, awesome.
I'm sorry to be missing this one. I can't do it in person today because I cannot move my head to the left. My theory is that I was born in 1984 and it slowly caught up to me overnight. So unfortunately, I won't be in person, but I will be there virtually.
So young and yet freaking.
All right, if there are no other comments on the capacity challenges, I'm going to move on to my second question here. All right, thinking about any new priorities or issues around energy that have kind of bubbled up since we last wrote these goals and objectives through the CEDS. Is there anything really pressing that, you know, wasn't in the UP Energy Task Force recommendations that are really important now that are emerging? Anything locally in any communities?
I mean, I guess I'm not sure that I have a problem today, but I'm sure I have a problem tomorrow. Is, you know, let's put EV stations out. Let's do all of these things that are electric grid, but the electric grid isn't ready for it, right? Like that draw is not ready. So then what am I doing? Am I creating a brownout or am I just creating a blackout? Like, how fast do I want to catch up with the concept of energy programs like putting EV stations in when the grid's not going to tolerate that increase because there's no production, right? Like, so that train is maybe slowly starting to spin the wheels to leave the station, but it hasn't, or maybe it's even worse than I imagined. But I am sure that if I start putting energy draws out on the highway and say, hey, let's put EV stations here and have cars stop and start using it, I'm sure the grid's going to crush if we did it as a Marquette County energy program, as a regional program. We put, I don't know, I'm just throwing a number on paper, 20 of those across Marquette County, so that when you're driving from the edge of Marquette County on the west side, on the east side, and coming all the way to the west side, that energy pull on a constant basis would probably crush most of our electric grid, I would think. So how do we overcome that? Like, the money's there to put these things in, but the money's not there to build the grid stronger or provide more capacity. So we put the cart before the egg, or what? Like, I don't know.
I don't disagree. I think one of the recommendations from the task force is saying, hey, how can the utilities talk with one another to figure out how you move forward on some of these things. If you're talking, level two chargers, level two chargers, are certainly easier to kind of put in than the high capacity chargers, the DC fast charging stations. DC fast charging stations, you certainly need to be working with your local utility to determine whether or not, there's enough capacity in that area, or whether or not, what kind of transformer, or where does that fit? It's adjacent to, three-phase, electric, that's at that location or not. There's certainly a lot of dollars that go in to make ready each of these sites, as well. And so working with your utility provider is going to be, a necessity. So I mean, yes, if you get grant money to do so, I mean, you're working with UPCO to say, hey, do we have capacity to make this happen? Yeah, you might have capacity right now, but the third, fourth down the line, there might start being some concerns.
Yeah, and that's just one of those things I'm not going to do. I'm going to the watershed partnership and saying, hey, I want to be on whatever your application is. Yep. to grow your application and make it more a regional concept. And I just know that Carl and his staff are doing that communication. But if I were looking at this from our perspective as, is there a problem? I think there is. I don't know there is. I guess that it's probably bigger than we've really addressed so far, but maybe I'm wrong. But I think that, the conversation is, why put an electric car on the road if you don't have a fast charging station? Because I'm going to sit in a line somewhere to charge my vehicle, or I'm going to be the funny YouTube video where I've got a generator I'm pulling out of my trunk to use gas to charge my own car along the highway. I mean, one of these things is going to happen, right? Like, I'm going to be the funny YouTube dude, or we're going to have a grid. Like, there's no in between to that, right? I don't know. Emily.
This is like question/consideration. So for these EV chargers, do any of them need broadband? My basic understanding is some need like an app to be able to pay. So like, does broadband need to be dovetailed in with?
Yes, you certainly need connectivity one way or another if they are part of a regional charging network that may exist. There's a number of them out there. You may need an app, or you certainly need a method to pay at that particular location. So connectivity one way or another, whether that's fiber or otherwise.
Ryan, I didn't know. I think I heard your question right about increased capacity too. Nagani is building a new substation, so we are about ready to award the bid on the actual construction of the grounds of that substation here at our next meeting. We've already awarded a number of components that need to be purchased for that substation. That will increase the capacity of Nagani, our electrical grid system in the Nagani area. In addition to that, we'll be connecting them through the ACT line that runs through Nagani in the regional area. And also, we will be putting in a couple of charging stations, not the fast acting ones, but the smaller ones.
No. So I didn't know that the broadband thing was part of that energy thing. So thank you, Emily, for that. But who's talking to the carriers that even give signal once you have broadband? Like, there's sections of Verizon that are just shut down completely, no signal whatsoever. And you call Verizon as a customer and you say, hey, I've got this area that's dead, and they send you a message and they say, well, we'll have our engineers look at it, and if they think it's a problem that they can fix, they'll let you know when they're going to fix it. If they think it's a problem that can't be fixed, they'll recommend that you change carriers, and they'll give you a free get out of jail pass. So when you want to transfer your service to AT&T, you don't have to pay the I left Verizon fees. I said, but I have 80% of my time in Verizon service, and then I go 20% to my camp and I have 0 service. I don't want to give up my phone to cover the 20%. And they're like, we don't know. Maybe we'll care someday. But that means, I mean, that's got to be tied to this whole idea, right? But I don't know that the carriers give a crap. Do they? Does anybody know that they give a crap, or how to reach like a consortium of I give a crappers?
So actually, with the effort building up towards the BEAD, the Broadband Equity, Affordability, and I can't remember the name of the act, but it's coming out of the IIJA, and there's a lot of funding for broadband. The FCC is refining its maps for broadband service, but along with that, there's also they're refining the mobile maps and trying to find out where those dead spots are. So the FCC has launched a phone app actually that everybody should download here. It's called FCC Speed Test. And you can go on this app and run a speed test in an area where you think that there is no service, and it will directly report it to the FCC that there's no availability in this area, and then it will get included in their updated map. So, you know, if they're overstating that they have service in an area, that the FCC is going to correct that.
Can we all just plan a convoy from here to Ishpeming and that little low spot that we lose signal in? Everybody stop there, hit your FCC app. Like, I mean, it's ridiculous, right? And that's the easy one. I can drive through it sometimes and keep my call. Sometimes I just drop every time I go through there. But then there's the harder spots where they just don't care in rural America. And the Verizon map shows it. It doesn't say poor, it says no service. And it's this big, long red line. You can go all the way from Marquette to Houghton and you have a green line. As soon as you turn down to 28-141, you have a red line and they don't care, right? But then past experience in Alaska, similar to here in the UP, is they share towers. But if it's an AT&T tower, every other carrier is a third-party carrier. So if one component of that tower goes down, AT&T pushes all of its service to their customers, and everybody else that's third-party drops. And unless that third party comes online and funds an upgrade to the AT&T tower, AT&T doesn't care. All their customers have their service. Everybody else may or may not care. But unless they get enough complaints, guess what? There's not enough complaints coming from little rural UP. They don't care. So that's why I said we got to find the I give a crappers, because there's not enough of them for a small community that's not going to be able to report. And unless everybody stops in that little Nagani pit going through town and hits that FCC app, they're probably not going to see the I give a crappers either. And they're going to say, yep, I got a green line right there. Never mind that little dip. But I don't know. I mean, I think that we're way off topic, and I apologize for that. But we got to find the I give a crappers in some of the things that we do, and start, like, that's almost like a consortium of what we got to figure out. Like, what's the list of I give a crappers on certain topics? Sorry, I made that term up.
All right. Is there any other final thoughts on this topic before I move on to our next presentation?
Just briefly, Ryan. So the SVP has been working, and me directly as well, for the past 2 years on with Eagle on electric vehicle charging stations. We're one signature away in Marquette and Munisig for making those projects final. They are for DC fast chargers, and one of the biggest obstacles has been just placement, especially because of the level 3 chargers, working with those utilities to actually, in the very beginning, define the placement, and like you said, possibly needing a transformer. You have to start that early because it takes a really long time, and actually finding a place that charger would work best. And you don't need the infrastructure upgrades. It's difficult and it's a process, but
So thinking about placement, have you seen communities updating their zoning ordinances yet? Or are they talking about or thinking about it or doing
I
it?
have not heard of that happening.
Okay, something we need to focus on then. All right, thank you very much. All right, I'm gonna switch over to the next slide. I have a short presentation here on data, new updated data for the CEDS. It kind of builds off of what we've had previously, but there's a lot of new information out there from the 2020 census and things such as the UP labor market analysis that was just recently completed or is in the process of being completed. So we're going to touch on all of these things, demographics, housing, labor and employment, occupations and industry, income, cost of living, broadband availability, distress, and health. You're going to see this graph here. This is our overall population for the 6-county region. The 2 yellow points you see here are from the 2020 census, and the in between data points are from the American Community Survey. So we know that our region has lost population, but you know, it hasn't been too great of a percentage if, over the whole period. This is what the structure of our population looks like in 2020. We see the baby boomers approaching aging into retirement. And then we have, you know, a fair amount here down in the 20 to 24, and that's due to our university population. But the structure of this is, you know, we're going to continue to see this aging population getting older over time, and you know, as they move on out of the population pyramid, then we're going to see even more decreasing population. But I think it's going to stabilize after that. Well, only time will tell, but I think this will go on for probably about the next 10 to 20 years thereabout. So looking again, I have mixed data between the 2020 census and the American Community Survey. This shows our 25 to 44 population, our young working age population, versus our 65 plus population. So we're seeing that just within the last few years, this older population has actually overtaken our young working age population. So that's a little bit challenging for the area's employers and family building in the Upper Peninsula. We'll see where this starts to trend to. Nothing has really changed too much with regard to race in the community. It's remained fairly stable here. I think the population of 2 or more races has increased, but everything's pretty much stayed the same. Then I looked into owner and renter occupied households to see how that has changed. That has not changed very much either. We've seen a little bit of increase in rentership, but these owner occupied households are staying just about the same, within maybe 50 households. Then I looked at the vacancy status of our households, and specifically looking at this for seasonal, recreational, or occasional use. I think it's there's often a concern about short-term rentals and seasonal homes taking up some of the available housing stock. I noticed in comparing the 2010 census and the 2020 census that those types of uses, or those types of vacancies, have actually declined. It's important to note that this also includes things like hunting cabins. So maybe there has been a decrease in those, or maybe some of the seasonal rental or seasonal houses have been turned over to full-time residences. I pulled this data from the Federal Reserve. This is showing new private housing structures authorized by building permits from 2007 to 2022. It shows that even though it's kind of zigzagging up and down here, it's remained relatively the same throughout this 2007 to 2022 period. Really not really much increase or decrease over the time. So that's Marquette on top that you see zigzagging around, particularly the spike in 2012, which I'm not sure what that was attributed to.
Can I say, so I'm
Yes, sir.
just trying to understand the bar graph. On the left, we're talking that's 120 permits to build a new house.
There has been 120 permits issued in that year.
For a new housing
Yes.
structure.
Right.
Okay.
Looking at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, annual average employment for the period of 2007 to 2022, we saw some decline during the financial crisis of 2008. And then it kind of became a new normal here over the decade. And then we saw a disruption from COVID, and we're starting to bounce back from that and getting back up to the level that we were approaching. It looks like it's trending toward that. Comparing that to the BLS average annual unemployment rate, similarly, we saw a slow decline from that financial crisis in 2008. And then a quick spike up and back down from the COVID pandemic. Here we see the Upper Peninsula employment and occupations. At the top of the list, office and administrative support, sales and related. This data is from the UP labor market study, and so I pulled it for the central region, but also food preparation, production, that's your manufacturing, occupations, transportation and materials moving, construction and extraction, and healthcare. I think we're pretty well aware that those are the top industries or occupations. And then this graph shows the net change in those occupations over 2018 to 2022. We noted in our CEDS strategy that apprenticeships are very important for growing the workforce, and there's been a lot of, I think, attention put into this, and it's starting to really show. I think I was really hopeful to see this. The top, I'm sorry about the colors here. That's not really kind of showing up what they are, but the one on top is Marquette. The second line is Delta. The third line is Dickinson, and then the rest are Menominee, Schoolcraft, and Alger. So we're seeing from 2019 a lot of growth here in the apprenticeships, and that's really great to see. And hopefully it continues upward like that, and maybe some of the strategies here can be really expanded. So really good. Change in industries, job change in industries. We've seen some bounce back from restaurants over the 2020 to 2022 period. That was one of the industries that was really affected by the pandemic, and glad to see that kind of getting back up to its workforce levels. Also included in that is building equipment contractors, motor vehicle parts, and crop production. Looking at some of the top industries that have been creating jobs, those are in construction, healthcare, retail trade, manufacturing, and accommodation, food services. This is for the year 2020, and the source is the Census Bureau's Business Dynamics Statistics. This is produced every couple of years.
Sorry, can you go back a second?
Yeah.
So just curious, like the big losses there, manufacturing and retail, right? So I would say manufacturing's tough depending on where you're at, whether or not there's even an opportunity for manufacturing, generally because of space, right?
Mm-hmm.
But retail seems like a big loss in Marquette County. And I don't know the other counties well enough to know how big of a loss it is for them, but maybe we ought to look at a future slide in what the dark stores impact is to the taxes and income in a county based on those losses. So like there's just times I can't find something, so I go to Amazon, right? I would much rather spend my money locally, and most of my stores know me in Ishpeming because I will go there and pay a higher price to buy local than it would to go through Amazon. But if I can't get it, guess what? Amazon's there for me, right? But where those tax dollars go and they're not shown as local income, right? They're not supporting my TIF district. And if that's a significant trend in our county, then what's the real loss in revenue that's happening because of that? And how do we shape a narrative at some point? I know it's a down the wrong path rabbit hole, so I don't want to spend time on it, but I think it's just something we're gonna have to start to figure out is if we're hitting those big bars downward, what's the economic impact besides just jobs or just something, right? There's gotta be a tax revenue and salaries and cost to living things that are generated from those downward trends. So,
yep.
Sorry.
So it's important to note too that this particular slide is a point in time. This is for the year 2020, so it's only capturing the height of the pandemic too. So, but your point is well taken, and I think absolutely we should look into including something in our strategy regarding dark stores and some of those potential trends with job and industry loss. Average annual pay is increasing across all communities. We're still in the Central UP behind the state of Michigan and the nation as a whole. Dickinson County kind of leads the pack here in terms of pay, and I think that's due to their strong manufacturing workforce that they have there in the county.
Maybe they're low fuel costs too. Drive an hour and save $1.20 a gallon.
The next slide shows, this is from the American Community Survey, and it includes median household income. Those have also been increasing. One of my takeaways from this is that while Schoolcraft was fairly farther below the rest of the counties, it is definitely rebounded here and even is up there ahead of some of the other counties. So I'm glad to see that they are with the rest of the pack now, and it continues that way. So good to see. Looking at typical living expenses, this is from the MIT's living wage calculator, and some of the data was from 2023. This was included in the UP labor market study, so I snipped it from that for the Central UP. This, I think, should be kind of looked at along with the Alice stability budget. This is not the Alice survival budget, but it's a slightly has more added into it and has kind of a more, wealth building kind of built into it, or how you can make your household more stable by putting away, say, 10% of savings. And the Alice Survival, sorry, let me back up a little bit. This is a product from the United Way that comes out about every 2 years. And so, there's the poverty level, but even if you make above poverty wages, it's still hard to get by and hard to survive. So they have the survival budget that is a minimum budget that you ought to, be making a certain wage to be able to make that budget work.
Right. Is there a way to pair the previous two slides in some way? Like, so we say the income's going up, but isn't also the cost to household budget going up? So is there a point at which, yeah, my income's going up, but I'm now falling further off of the scale of affordability as a trend graph? That we could pair together, that'd be awesome.
I think that would be a great exercise, and we'll look into that for sure. And on to broadband availability. So I sent this from the FCC's latest map. They're on, I think, version 2 right now. There will be a couple more versions as they continue to refine this, and leading up to the BEAD grant that's coming out, and they're going to use this as a way to understand what locations are eligible. So the blue is where we have availability, and lighter shades of blue it's a percentage wise of where areas within here have.
The darker the blue, the better we are.
Yep. And so we took this graph, we took their data that they have, and we actually put in the addresses that do have broadband availability, either cable or fiber, at a minimum speed of 100 megabits down by 100 megabits up. That is the new standard for what broadband is. So if you have below that, it's not broadband, it's just internet. So this, you can see they're kind of, a lot of it is along travel corridors, and there's a few points here and there scattered in areas that are, you're kind of scratching your head. There's one point of cable here, that's errors in the data. So I looked at these further into the FCC map and tried to see what the address was of this place. Here up in Big Bay, that address is actually a Marquette address with a Big Bay area code. So it got put up there for some reason. So there's a little bit of cleanup that needs to be done with it, but they're continuing to refine that, and it's continuing to go on. So
I guess I was surprised by your statement of broadband versus internet. I don't know that I've ever tried to figure out what the difference was. If I have internet, it's running fine. I just assumed that I had broadband, but that might be that might actually be a educational item, just to let people know what they do or don't have when it comes to certain things. Because I mean, we're talking broadband, but my phone works, it gets signal. I must have something similar to broadband, right? Like, I don't know. I'm not an IT dude. I don't want to be an IT dude, but I think we have a lot of people that just don't know. They just, I have signal or I don't have signal is really more of what most people generally know. I use the NMU's internet because of affordability versus Spectrum versus, where they might get higher speeds, right? Like, I don't care as long as I can get to the internet and do what I want to do. But at some point I do when I can't connect or I can't link or I can't do something fast enough. But most of us aren't in the realm of fast. we're in the realm of functional, and we might not understand it. That might be something that helps people kind of gain a little bit more appreciation for what broadband is and why it's important and why we should or should not be focused on, hey, I don't have it then.
Right. Yeah, there's some funding for broadband literacy and education too in the BEAD, so that'll be an opportunity for us. But broadband is especially important as we're thinking about things like telehealth and education and things like that, being able to teleconference and use your devices and the Internet of Things and stuff like that. Yeah, having that is going to be essential here, and hopefully, you know, I think I would point out too that the Robin grant, which was modeled after the NOFO that came out for BEAD, it was our state broadband grant. No location in the UP, no ISP in the UP got funding through that. It all went downstate. And I'm interested in finding out why we didn't get funding through that. Is it that we didn't put out applications? Is it that we, you know, didn't have good enough applications? Did we not have enough community support for our applications? But I think we need to get out ahead of this and have a plan for as BEAD comes out, because this is a historic level of funding that if we don't capture some of that, we're not going to get, it's not going to come back around. So we really need to put our heads together, counties and communities, on coordinating with our ISPs to figure out what locations are we going after and do some planning ahead of that. And here are the areas that where funding is committed, federal funding is committed for broadband. The blue area that you see all over the place is RDOF, for the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund, and all of that work is being done by Highline, and they're laying fiber throughout these areas. Right now, I think they're in Delta County and Menominee County, as well as over in the eastern UP right now. I don't think that they've started in the Marquette area yet, but I could be wrong about that.
Hey, Nate, we're not looking too good.
Where do you have broadband?
All right, and pop in our economic distress criteria I queried for, this is through Stats America. It includes Bureau of Labor Statistics and Census information here, and this is what the EDA uses to determine our level of distress for our region, and determines kind of our share of funding that we have to put forward for grants. So we meet the threshold for economic distress in our region. And then finally, I think this is my last slide. I pulled this from the UP Adult Health Needs Survey from 2021, and it shows many communities declining in, which is a good thing, declining in reporting health status only fair or poor. And so it's good to see people's perception of their health improving. Oh, I got one last one for Kathy. She shared this one before, and I want to include this in our CEDS because it's a really nice graphic here and really shows the economic impact and output of our Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore, which draws tons of visitors and spurs so much in our region. So just wanted to share that too. This is from the, I believe from the Forest Service puts this together.
Yeah, you would have got that probably from MPS website stuff. You can pull all that up.
Yeah.
Website, yeah.
Thank you. And I think, well, I mentioned that I was going to show you this Renew America's Nonprofits. I have a link for it in this presentation. I'm going to send it out after we finish this. But it's a energy efficiency grant through the Department of Energy, specifically for nonprofits, and I think includes an element of technical assistance with that. And so check out this link and learn more about it. And then there's some deadlines approaching. DNR Spark grants, the deadline is June 26th in just a few days, as well as the MEDC RAP 2.0 grant, which ends in June 30th. And then finally, I want to tell you a little bit about the Regional Housing Partnership. So QPAD and Community Action Alger Marquette have been designated as the co-leads for our Central UP Regional Housing Partnership. This is a program initiative from MISHDA. MISHDA has created the statewide housing plan, and it has a number of priorities in it. Things such as rental housing and older adult housing and housing stock. We have our own priorities here among communities in the Central UP, and we need to understand how they align with those statewide housing priorities. So MISHDA has asked our two organizations to sort of be the facilitators and pull together this housing ecosystem to understand those priorities and come up with an action plan that we can submit to them that aligns with the statewide housing plan so they can direct the appropriate resources to our communities. And so we're having a meeting next week on that, a steering committee to kind of just set up the next steps of this program. And that's going to be in Escanaba on the 26th, but the big meeting is going to be July 25th at the NMU Northern Center. I have not sent out invitations for this yet, but we're working on building up the list for that at this meeting as well, next week's meeting. And so you'll see something fairly soon on that if you are part of the housing ecosystem related kind of partner on that. So you can expect to see that. And I think that's all I have here and I'd welcome any other organization that's still on the line or are here in person to share their relevant information.
Hey, Ryan, this is Kathy. I'm sorry, somebody from Munising, somebody might have asked this. I had to step out for just a second. When you were sharing those different tables on population and uses of properties, whether they're owned and rented and that type of thing, I'm assuming probably that was, I know that was for the whole UP. Is there any way to get that broken down per county or no?
Yes. Yep, absolutely. We can do that.
Okay, because I always get that all the time, you know, and I'm sure a lot of us do. Hey, you know, we've got so many places that are, especially in a tourism area like we have, Munising area, you know, there's just so many places that are now transient and that are not long-term rentals or places you can live, you know, owner occupied. So I was curious on that one because I saw it looks like it was more in 2010, which was a little surprising than in 2020. I would have thought it'd been the other way around. But maybe that is the way for us,
yeah.
You know, and it's not that way for other folks. But it would be neat to see that by county if we could.
Yeah, we can get that at the county level and we can actually get it at the city level too, because this is from the census. So not the American Community Survey, which has you know, a significant margin of error for smaller communities. We can't really rely on that too much because they'll often be off by like, 100 households or something, which makes a substantial difference for a community like Munising. But since it's the census, you can kind of hang your hat on that. And so yeah, we can get you that information.
That would be great.
So,
Yeah, and even if you could break it down, Alger County and then also, Munising, because we get that all the time from people. So
definitely.
Thanks.
Wonder how we might be able to figure out some more data about this seems to be tied directly to the housing discussions that are going to follow with that other group, right? And the question really keeps surfacing as to whether or not short-term rentals are good or bad. And there's these polar opposites, and then there's this middle group. And the middle groups want to kind of just understand total economics, where the polar groups are taxes and not being treated the same as the hotel industry, hospitality industry versus the real estate market, polar opposite conversation. But in a small community like Ishmael, the real investment in some of my housing where somebody buys a crap house at a dirt cheap price, they'll go and invest to be able to turn it into a short-term rental because they'll be able to get a quality person into that house. They know that they might not get as many rentals throughout the year, but the cost of the rental will be higher and the value will be greater. And why do I care so much of a short-term, long-term if the only investors in this housing market is going in and fixing it up and making it look great and removing some of my blight issues versus somebody that's going to do a long-term rental but doesn't put any dollars into it. And like you walk up to the house and like, there can't be somebody living in there, and it's being rented out to an NMU student for $200 a month because they can find somebody that's desperate to find housing and will live in crap and filth because of it. And I can buy a house for $10,000, not insure it, and leave it the same condition, doesn't do anything for blight. And then I've got 50, 60 properties under one owner doing that. Whereas I get one person that wants to come in, buy it, and turn it into a short-term rental and invest in it. And they're getting $1,000 a month for their rent, or $1,000 a visit for their rent, whatever. They're getting, significantly different values because they're putting significantly different effort and investment into it. Even if they don't stay as a short-term rental and it ends up selling, that's great. The blight mitigation of those short-term rentals is a quality investment in the community. Yet you've got these folks that are talking about, well, you need to reinvigorate the community, you need to bring younger families to town. I get that argument. We showed that argument, but I can't divest from the fact that I'm getting rid of blighted properties and getting some significant investment in the community by letting some slumlord buy another one and keep perpetuating the slums of $100, $200 investment, and it's our college students living in them. I mean, it's so we got to figure out like some way of addressing the total economics of short-term rentals, because I get the hospitality industry wants to have some fair and equitable comparable fees and taxes and things, but they're also not coming into my town and spending money on my housing and changing my blight picture. So, realtor just wants to keep selling the house over and over and over. The more they sell that house, the more money they make, right? So I don't really subscribe to the realtors side of things just because they're turning houses, but I do a little bit support the industry of hospitality, but I also really support getting rid of my blighted properties and putting investment into the community. So somewhere in that discussion of this housing, we need to understand some more of that dynamics. And if it really is declining, great, because that's an easy picture to say, look, it's not as bad as you think it is. I'm not sure people aren't buying caps and moving out because there's enough internet. They're getting signal, right? And if I can get signal and I can work remotely because of 2020 shift of remote work, then maybe those camps are being sold and converted to housing, but you see short-term rentals in a community where you never saw it out in those camps because people weren't living at camps. They were just, that's deer season, that influx. So maybe that's part of that shift. I don't know, but how do we dig in and figure out some of those economics? That would be really, I think it'd be valuable to my town. I'm assuming that everybody else wants to see that kind of stuff too.
This is Peter Hood. I wanted to make a comment about that. The short-term rental issue varies significantly as to the causes by community. It's very different for a community like a university community than here. So for instance, you know, we just don't have the issue that you have of rundown houses in the city. In fact, most of our short-term rentals are the properties on lakes and rivers. And the other thing is we have virtually no corporate interest here investing in short-term rentals. What we have is people who call up a realtor and say, I want a home where I can go work in the summer. I need broadband internet and I rent it out when I'm not there. So those houses aren't being taken off the long-term rental market. There's somebody who wants to rent it when they're not there just to pay taxes and stuff. That's a very different issue than other communities that have high volumes of tourism and therefore a corporate investment interest to rent those properties out, like ski hills and that sort of stuff near ski hills. So in evaluating the short-term rental issue across the UP, it's very county specific and city specific. And so I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that because I don't look at it from that perspective where I'm at, but it's also some of that dynamics that needs to be pulled out of the discussion. So when we talk about it, we're understanding the total housing solution because we're a regional housing discussion, right? And you can't get what the picture is for the region without understanding that dynamic. But you know, there might be a way in which we have to identify some level of population or type of community, whether it's just, you know, rural with lakes and streams versus populated universities or other. So certainly.
Yeah, the solution is just not one size fits all. So
yeah, no, that's absolutely it.
Totally agree. All right, are there any other final comments or anybody want to share anything?
Okay, so back to the comment on the siloing of things. I'm sorry, I came in late, sorry I was late. So Brenton with Fresh Systems, consultant. A couple weeks ago, I pulled together a group of different people, who are all working with on-farm food safety in different capacities down in Kalamazoo. And so we had people from FDA and USDA and different arms of Michigan Ag and MSU Extension and others. And just getting everybody in the same room together, talking to each other, was really, really helpful in terms of starting to build some of those connections between the different silos. Because, you know, if you're a farm, you have all these different requirements that are being put on you from different agencies and all these different tools and things that are available that you can use from different agencies. And it's really hard to navigate all of it, right? So having everybody in the room together saying like, here's what I'm hearing from people that I'm working with. And how many people from two different branches of MDARD who weren't aware of what each other was necessarily doing specifically. And they both work in specifically food safety in that one branch of government and were unaware of what each other was doing. So a parallel kind of thing like that in terms of energy programs, I think would be bringing all the giver crappers, like you said, in one room together to start building those connections, relationships, and braiding those services together.
That's going to become a thing. Keep that phrase going. Catch on. Well, I'll share one thing. It's sort of tangent, sort of off topic, but the state legislature gave 8 to 12 months for solid waste authorities to update their plans to include composting as a required component of their waste diversion strategies. And it just so happens that the city of Ishpeming is one of 2 communities in all of the state of Michigan that receive federal funding for composting as a pilot program to develop a site and proof concept for how to do composting. And so that was awarded finally right before the nightmare of the federal deficit and lifting the ceiling arguments. And if you didn't have it funded by the 25th of May, you were losing your federal funding. So on the 25th of May, our contract got awarded $389,000 of effort going into the city in the next 2 years. And by the time we get to that line of 8 to 12 months to implement, we'll have proofed at least 1 year of our concept towards that. So in other news, the state gave that same organization some money as well through Eagle, through a grant. And so our $400,000 effort is actually somewhere around $600,000 effort. So Marquette County is already on the way to success for their new waste diversion strategy to include composting, and Ishpeming will probably be the tip of the spear for all things composting in Marquette County. In a positive direction from that perspective, which, you know, ties in some way, shape, or form to energy. But anyway, I thought that was big news. You'll see more of it starting to roll out in communication and publications and things. And then on the other side of that same waste diversion, it would be wrong for me to not kind of talk about our partnership with the partnership because they've got an electronics recycling going on this month, and we're doing a tire recycling at Ishpeming. So a countywide effort of waste diversion and recycling. I think Sands Township got their own Eagle grant to do the electronics recycling, and they're doing theirs throughout the year. And then we partnered with Watershed to offer a tire recycling event, which is this weekend, Saturday. So anybody has tires, up to 10 tires of your own personal tires, up to a certain size, not to be an industrial size vehicle, can be dropped off in the city of Ishpeming and get rid of anything you find. So if you also do a community cleanup and you go find all the tires that are laying in the woods or in the ditches, bring them on down, we'll take them, right? But
9:30 in a ditch.
yeah, no, I mean,
You don't need to be, you don't need to.
no, it's all of West End. I mean, we're putting it on the West End. It's all of Marquette County, but we're putting a event on in the West End to support the county-wide investment in waste diversion. And then the same thing's happening in the Sands Township with the electronics recycling. So opportunities abound to get some of the stuff out of your yard or out of your community that needs to be cleaned up. But it's all in that waste diversion strategy. And so take advantage of those things.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. And sorry, whoever was online, you can talk first.
Sure. Sorry, to add to the waste diversion things, QPAD will be hosting an event in Marquette County regarding the changes to Part 115 and solid waste management plans. That is tentatively scheduled right now. We're still confirming the date, but for the 3rd week of July coming up. The Alger County one was just scheduled for July 11th, and we've already hosted in the other 4 counties.
Wait, the 28th.
Thank you for that, Ryan.
Don't put it on the 28th.
It's tentatively the 21st right now.
I'll add, because I attended the one.
Jen Figler from Rep.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
I'm sorry, I think there's a delay on mine. I'm sorry to interrupt. Jen Figler from Rep Hill's office just once again, and I pretty much stalk all of your all's Facebook pages to see what we can do to elevate things that are going on in your area that we can, share on our Facebook page. And I want to say it's sometimes much like drinking from a fire hose. So if there's particular things that you'd like shared, please email my email box at jfigler, F like Frank, IGLER, at house.mi.gov. I'll put that back in the chat as well. I'm very happy to do that.
Very grateful for that, Jennifer. Thank you. And I guess I'll put it out one last time here. Does anybody on the line have any final thoughts or anything that they'd like to share?
No, I was just going to add that to Ryan Carrick's thing, that was a very valuable and informative meeting on recycling and composting that they put on in Schoolcraft County, and I'd highly recommend anybody who could attend it doing so.
Very recommendation. Kathleen?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that SWP recently received around $400,000 from the Forest Service through 2 different grant programs to assist UP communities with wildfire mitigation. And so we did put out a press release, and we created a form for representatives of local units of government and tribes to let us know if they have any property that they are interested in us coming out and surveying and or doing some work on with our Great Lakes Climate Corps crews. So Ryan, I will share that information with you. We have a form, so it's easier for us to kind of house all that information.
Great, will do. What a great group that is too. I bet they work real hard during the summer.
Yes, they are quite busy.
Okay, and with that, I think we're gonna close out the CEDS. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending, and really appreciate your help with this and attention on everything. So have a great afternoon.
Ryan.
Bye.